Careblazer, are you facing some challenging, difficult, dementia related behaviors and everything you've tried so far hasn't worked? Well, in today's video, I want to share three of my favorite ways that you can respond to any challenging, difficult dementia related behavior. But I first want to start off with why many of our behavior approaches and tips and strategies don't work. In fact, sometimes they seem to backfire or make things worse. A lot of times, when people are facing a challenging behavior, they want to know, hey, how do I respond to this? How do I change this? And they might even write to me or submit a question under a video. What do I do to get my loved one to bathe? What do I do to get them to accept help? How do I get them to go to a doctor's appointment? And the most important thing to know is that we have to adjust our approach that we are using for the person and not for the diagnosis. Sometimes we get so stuck on trying to figure out what to do because of the dementia that we aren't paying attention on what to do for this person with dementia. We cannot use the same approach for every person with dementia. They're not going to respond the same way. You can have two people, the same age, the same diagnosis, the same stage of dementia, with the same symptoms, but they will not respond to the same approach. Think about it like this. If you have low vision, we can't just give you the glasses that your neighbor uses and give them to you and expect them to work to help you see better. Everybody has a very specific prescription to help them with their level of vision impairment. The same is true for dementia. That person is going to have some behavioral symptoms. How we respond to them is going to change. So, what that means, and what many people don't want to do, is it means we are going to have to be creative and critical in our thinking, meaning we have to think about our loved one and the specific behavior when it comes to how we want to respond. We're not going to go for a cookie cutter approach. Every person with dementia who doesn't want to bathe is not going to respond if we say, it's a spa day. It's not going to work, right? So I really want to encourage you as I share these three approaches. I want you to think through, how might this look for my loved one? And I'm going to share real life examples from Careblazers who have used this approach. Do not get stuck on the specific situation. Don't get so caught up in the specific example I'm giving that you miss the big picture of how you can use this strategy for all kinds of situations. I'm currently writing a book on how to respond to difficult dementia-related behaviors, and I have an entire section with practical, real-world ways that you can respond. And I have examples for each and every one. And they're clumped into categories. So I have a category on how to handle difficult behaviors proactively, meaning we can stop them before they start. I have a section on how to deal with behaviors when it's more of a communication issue and they're not understanding you or you're not understanding them. And I have a section on what strategies that can apply to almost any behavior. So that's what I want to stick with today. I'm going to share just three of my top three. Let's get started. And I want to know how you plan to try to use these approaches. Here's strategy number one. Focus on the ending that you want instead of their understanding. This can apply to so many situations. Here's an example. A Careblazer inside of our program was sharing how after a day of running errands, they got back to their home, and when the Careblazer announced to her mom, hey, we're back home, her mom said, we're not home, that's not my home, and she didn't want to get out of the car to go into the house. So this Careblazer tried to convince her mom, hey, yes, we're home, that's your home, here are pictures of your home, here's the car registration with the address of your home, and no matter what this Careblazer said or did, the mom didn't want to get out of the home because she didn't believe that was her home. To save ourselves lots of frustration, because there will be times your loved one with dementia just doesn't believe the truth or doesn't understand what you understand, stop trying to get them to understand what you understand and instead focus on the ending. Instead of focusing on their understanding, focusing on the ending that you want. In this example, the Careblazer wanted her mom to go into the home. She didn't need her mom to understand it was the home. She could have said all kinds of different things like, here's our last errand for the day. Or I hear this place has a really cool garden in the backyard. Let's check it out, knowing that her mom really loved gardening. Or, oh my gosh, I really need a drink. I'm thirsty. Let's stop in here and grab a drink. If her mom is so against the idea of that being her home, we can just drop that altogether. I was explaining this concept in a presentation I was giving recently, and one of the members of the audience said, hey, my mom doesn't understand that she needs to get help into the home. I've been trying to convince her to allow help into the home. The home is getting dirty. Things are piling up. She can't do it on her own anymore. My mom doesn't want to hear it. So that was an example of, okay, let's try this approach. Instead of trying to focus on getting your mom to understand she needs help, focus on the ending you want, which is how do we get help in the home? How do we just start giving her the help that she needs? In this case, tidying up the home, cleaning the home. Could be the caregiver doing it a couple minutes a day. Could be the caregiver bringing in an outside person to come clean a couple times a week. Again, shift your mind. They don't have to understand what we understand. We want to focus on the ending. That's number one. Another approach I really like is to focus on trying to understand them before you try to change them. This is all about you. A lot of times we have loved ones who do behaviors that are so disruptive, so distressing, so bothersome. We just want the behavior to stop. And because we want the behavior to stop, we put all of our focus on trying to stop the behavior without necessarily trying to understand the behavior. And sometimes this can be really cruel. I have an example of a Careblazer whose mom would scream at night. When it was time to go to bed, she helped her mom get into her bed and turned off the lights. The mom would just start screaming and screaming and screaming. And this Careblazer focused on trying to change the behavior of screaming. She tried to get her mom to stop yelling. Don't scream, be quiet. People are trying to sleep. Shh, like just trying to focus on stopping the behavior. Well, none of it worked. But when we talked about this concept of let's try to understand this behavior. What could it mean? What is she trying to communicate? Observe what she is actually doing. What is different about this room compared to other rooms? What's different about the situation compared to other situations? And once this Careblazer started to shift, she started to notice details she didn't really notice before. Like, for example, her mom always seemed super scared when she was yelling and screaming. So now she's starting to wonder what's causing my mom to feel so scared. She finally put it together that her mom was scared by the reflection in the mirror. She had closet doors that were mirrored. And so then she was able to shift the position of the bed so it wasn't facing the mirrors, and the screaming stopped. But if the Careblazer kept focusing on trying to stop the behavior of screaming rather than trying to understand the behavior, she would have just kept telling her mom to be quiet without ever addressing the very scary thing of her mom not recognizing the reflection in the mirror. And then the third and final strategy that can be applied to many different situations is to respond to their emotion and not their words. So sometimes somebody with dementia will say something that's totally off the wall or not true at all. And we don't even know how to respond to it, because if we say it's not true, they might think that we're not on their side. We don't believe them. They might start to see us as more of an enemy or somebody against them. But we don't necessarily want to agree with them either. Sometimes what they're saying is totally off or might even be against us, and we don't want to agree. So here's where you respond to the emotion. I once worked with a client who thought somebody was breaking into his home and changing his kitchen cabinets in the middle of the night. Now, he would have video cameras. We could look at the video footage. Nobody ever came into his home. We could point out that the kitchen cabinets are exactly the same, take pictures of them. None of it worked, right? But instead, we decided to focus on his emotion. His emotion is that he was scared. He was scared. There were robbers, criminals breaking into his home in the middle of the night while he was sleeping. So if I were to get into a conversation about his words, it would be a merry-go-round back and forth. We would make no progress. People are coming into your home. They're changing the cabinets. How do they do that? Why is there nobody on the camera? That seems like it would make a lot of noise and wake you up. You can see how it doesn't go anywhere. But once we shift to the emotion of, wow, that sounds really scary, all of a sudden there's nothing to argue with. He's like, yeah, that is scary. Somebody's breaking into my home. And I can say, I'd be pretty scared too if somebody was breaking into my home. I'm not even agreeing with him that that's what's happening. I'm just sharing with him, yeah, I would be scared too. And then I can get into a conversation of, well, what do you do when you're scared? This is what I do when I'm scared. Let's try that together. We don't ever have to even go back and talk about the cupboards. We don't even have to bring up the kitchen again. All of a sudden, we're talking about feelings and emotions and what we do in those situations. So, a challenge to you would be the next time you have no idea what to say, or your loved one is saying something totally untrue or off the wall, ask yourself, what do you think it is that they're feeling? What's the emotion underneath their words? And just respond to that. That sounds scary. You seem sad. You look worried. Just respond to the emotion and follow that path and just be there, comfort them, reassure them. And whenever that window happens where you can redirect and move, take that option. And it's so hard because it's like learning a new language. We never actually have to go back and close the conversation. We could just leave it alone, leave it be, leave it out there, because sometimes they don't go back to the conversation at all. They don't go back to the original topic. We don't want to bring it back up and put it back in their mind. There's literally no shortage of strategies we could use in responding to all kinds of behavior. The hardest part is not necessarily coming up with the actual strategy, it's how to apply that strategy for your particular loved one, because it's not going to be cookie cutter. It's not going to be a generic tip or trick. It's going to be taking the strategy and figuring out, how do I tweak this for my loved one? So let me know in the comments below, which of the 3 strategies will you try, or do you like the best? Is it more focusing on the ending, not their understanding? Is it more focusing on your understanding of the behavior, trying to understand what their behavior is about before you try to change the behavior? Or is it responding to the emotion under the words rather than the words themselves? I promise you, one of these 3 approaches can really help make a difference in some sort of challenging situation that you are facing or will face in your caregiving journey. And in case you haven't heard, I am hosting a 5-day live behavior breakthroughs experience where you can join us for 5 days live, where I'm going to be teaching some of my best strategies, talking about where these challenging behaviors come from, why they happen in the first place, and what you can do about them. There is a link below this video, or you can go to careblazers.com/breakthrough, and you can sign up to save your spot. We get started on July 7th. Your last chance to join and save your spot is July 6th. So don't wait. I hope to see you there. I'm sending you so much love in the meantime. Hang in there. There's always something we could do to try to make the situation better. These are just 3 of many ideas. Sending you love. Bye.
Also, Nico gets a belly rub for every person who subscribes from this video. So if you haven't already, click the red subscribe button. It's totally free, and Nico says thank you very much.